Welcome to this video, round 9 of Tata till 2014. And round 9 already means that we're nearing the end of the tournament. It's only 11 rounds this year, contrary to former years where we had 13 rounds. So it really gets to the decisive stages now. Okay, let's start with today's coverage. I'm this time sorting the games a bit differently, and start with Nakamura against Fabiano Caruana. Let me choose this game, and we get a fianchetto variation of the King's Indian Gelfand. This is now Black's choice. What is he going to play? He's going for c5, so not a typical King's Indian setup with d6 and e5. And it's also not a Gelfand with d5, so we are going with c5. This is in fact an interesting move order. Also, one move earlier is interesting. I played this one move earlier to in more than one game. What is Black's idea? Yeah, one idea is that if White goes d5, Black has quite an interesting choice here. He can even consider to transpose into a kind of Benko gambit, or just go d6, e6, go for the modern Benoni fianchetto variation. And this line has some additional points, and we see one of them. Nakamura does not want to advance, he just develops, and after this captures, Caruana plays the very direct move Queen c7, attacking the c4 pawn. Yeah, and in fact White needs to take care of that. If he sacrifices the pawn, this is very questionable if he gets enough compensation. For example, after a move like castles, Black can really take it. Sometimes in the English opening you can sacrifice c4, but normally this happens in positions where Black has played e6 and White has some compensation on the dark squares. Here this is obviously not possible, and Black in general does not have any square weaknesses in the center like d6, e6. It's questionable compensation, really. White needs to look at the pawn, and he covered it with in this game he covered it with b3, after which Black has an interesting move available. He played d5. This at first looks a bit surprising, because d5 is a square that White controls very nicely. Still, it is possible. The easiest move to check is, of course, c takes d5. There's just this piece hanging, so not working. And the other move you need to check is knight takes d5. However, after knight takes, this is still a problem. After this, check. Again, very embarrassing. And after the bishop move, Black plays e6, attacking the bishop. And after the retreat, after rook d8 and the possible e5, White is just losing this knight. A very unlucky situation. This means that you cannot really take it. I mean, bishop d5, theoretically speaking, but this is a very ugly move. Black has more than one interesting continuation. One is bishop h3, for example, preventing castles, and this is just a very silly position of the bishop. Black can also consider to just take it at the right moment. Yeah, basically this is the move that White should play, and Nakamura went for it. Queen a5, bishop d2, yeah, intending the discovered move, and now Black retreated. So Black has played 3 queen moves in the opening. Usually this is not so advisable, moving it so often. But in the meantime, white has not accomplished much. He's got the bishop on d2 developed. The knights here are not ideally placed, especially considering that if we look at what happens here, the knight couldn't retreat to d4 as the queen is controlling the square, and needed to go to a3. Yeah, this is in fact a known position. For example, if we at this moment look at the move bishop f5, this has been played in Kramnik against Rajabov in the London candidates. This is one known example. Or knight c6, this has been played before, also here in the game. Knight c2, bishop e6, attacking the weakness here. This has been played in a game Kismatulin against Giri in the Rhodes European Club Cup last year. So we are in known territory, but white now plays a different move, not knight e3. He played rook b1, so a counter attack here. So how to sum up this position? Yeah, both sides can attack weak pawns. The b pawn is weak. It's on this half-open b file. And of course, the c4 pawn is also very weak. And to be honest, it looks to me that those two weaknesses basically cancel each other out. And in the game, we see that after rook c8, knight e3, if white would take, this is a possible move, black regains the pawn and has a very nice position with the knight being on c4, so taking is not a good idea. White prepares that and now grabs. This is an attempt to complicate matters, really. He gives up the strong bishop on g2 for a pawn, and yeah, black cannot really take here. I mean, he can, but I think what he played is superior. This kind of lines are maybe somewhat more active for white. He played bishop h3 and later went for this centralization. And I think this is a very good play by black. It's simply activating pieces. This bishop is very annoying, always, yeah, keeping the white king alert so that the queen on the long diagonal, something like that can easily happen. And the back rank is also weak. Yeah, and white really has no coordination to push the c-pawn or make any substantial headway. It seems that this was hanging. It seems that black simply has fine compensation for the pawn. He does not mind the trade. It actually further enhances the bishops, and after the knight e3 is gone, c4 is becoming much weaker. In fact, I think we're already in a position where yeah, white must be a bit more cautious in comparison. But okay, it's not like white is in trouble, but he needs to be precise. I think black's play is relatively straightforward. Queen g4. Now f3. And now black took on d1. This is a neat little intermezzo. Of course, white cannot take here because of bishop
check
to d4 check. Yeah, you can
check.
only do some desperado
Checkmate.
moves and at the end get mated. Quite nice with the bishops. Yeah, of course, after rook takes d1, white just needs to recapture.
Check.
Yeah, keeping the position active. No, taking here.
Check.
At the end, does not work. Now the bishop here is exposed and cannot be saved. as it is trapped here. Yeah, you can continue this line if you like. You can go here and something like that. This still is very problematic for black. There's now bishop b4 threatened, and something
check, check,
like that does not really help. Sum it up, you shouldn't take here.
check,
What he played after knight f2 is much easier. Bishop f8. This is threatening or intending to activate this piece and use this pin. Queen d7, and now he just decided to simplify matters and make sure basically to get a draw. White now plays an interesting try. Played bishop to b4, but it does not really help much. Black took and now takes on h3. It's still problematic for white to make any headway. The knight is just not a good piece, and c4 is still very weak. Black now played a good move with h6, covering the important g5 square, so that white cannot easily activate the knight. And this is a weak pawn anyway. After knight f2, bishop c5, pinning, rook d3,
check,
and this we got to a rook endgame, where after rook a3, here black needed to decide to go for more passive defense or an active defense. Very often in the rook endgame you should go for active play. However, here it is not necessary to consider any sacrifices of the a6 pawn to activate the rook. Here the rook can just cover, and after this we see that white really does not have any options to activate the king, and this is basically the decisive factor here that prevent white from making any sort of progress. They continued for a while actually, but there is not much going on. White enjoys a symbolic advantage because of space, but there is no real opportunity for white to win the game. You could look a bit, you could analyze this a bit deeper, but I have limited time in the video, and it's just very drawish, and in fact after a couple of more moves they agreed to a draw. Yeah, Nakamura even got the a-pawn, but black just has too much counterplay.
Check, check.
Here you basically can give check all the way, and otherwise you would pick up one of those pawns. So this seemed to me like a very correct draw. It never ever was substantial for one of the players. Okay, the next game, Rapport against Giri. And you already know this Hungarian GM is very creative. After knight f6, he went for bishop f4. So very early deviation, and it does not at first look like much. Bishop f4, the London system, notoriously, you can really say that, boring opening. Very often it leads to rather dry positions. I sometimes play it myself, especially in blitz games, because the simplicity of positions is sometimes a good weapon against certain players. However, in this game we see that there is no draw or anything at all, or dry play. Giri went for c5. This is of course a sharp move, immediately attacking the pawn. And another idea is that the queen here quickly joins the action. If white plays a standard move like, let's say e3 for example, then there is queen b6 to consider. I'm not saying that it is great for black, but white needs to consider the possibility that his b-pawn is coming under fire. This is a constant issue once you develop your bishop early on c1. It's quite similar in the Chompovsky, for example. Here there's also knight c3, for example, and so it's very interesting play. But this did not happen. Rapport, in fact, immediately went his own way and took on c5, just taking the pawn. And this immediately leads to complications, because this pawn, how do you get it back? I mean, normally those captures are answered by e6 and bishop takes c5. But here, there is bishop d6. And it's not so clear that black is going to get the pawn back without any problems. So, how do you actually get it back? Giri played knight a6, not illogical at all, trying to get it with the knight. But now Rapport went for queen d4. And just a very, very unusual position. Yeah, we're playing chess here from move 4. This is quite nice to see. There's no preparation or deep computer stuff. They just play a game here. And it leads to interesting play.
Check.
Giri gave this check. He wants to get the pawn back, obviously. Knight c3. And knight takes c5, getting it back. Yeah, now we see an interesting direct play. Bishop d2 is played. A voluntary retreat, but it threatens something. Knight e4, a discovery. And Giri needs to react to that. This is simply threatening to win material. And he played knight e6, attacking the queen. And it went to h4. Yeah, not much else really in terms of logical squares or active squares. And now g5. Yeah, note that the queen is protecting from the side. And g5, of course, wins a move, a tempo against the queen. Moved again. And now d5, trying to occupy the center. Of course, g5, this is a bit of an untidy move. It's an early, it's also a bit of a weakening of the king side, but it's very dynamic, winning a tempo. And, bishop g7 can be a good development. But okay, first d5 shows that black is going to play actively in the center. But this is immediately answered by a very active reply with e4. Rapport fights for the center. And if black captures, this is completely out of the question. Attacking the queen. And after de, there is also knight e4. So the capture on e4 is not really to black's benefit. He went for d4 instead. And now we get very weird complications.
Check.
Gave the check. Bishop d7, the only reply basically.
Check.
And after the capture, knight takes. You don't want to put the king in the middle, of course. White went knight d5. It's a very, very strange position where the knight on d5 is very actively placed and not so easy at the moment to dislodge, because the e6 knight is blocking the e-pawn. So this is really a strong piece on d5. The only drawback is that after queen c5, and this is what Giri played, black is just attacking on c2. And you don't really have an attractive move to cover the pawn. So a move like rook c1 or another queen move is really not helping much. So Rapport goes for a sharp move. He just gives it up. Knight f3, queen c2, and castles. This is a very straightforward way to play. I'm pretty sure that lots of strong players would go for that, simply because it mobilizes all forces and makes sure that you have active play. You're not defending any weaknesses. The weak pawn you just gave away, but you're left with activity though. So this is the most important thing. Note that the king is still on e8. Here Giri took on e4, and this seems to be the right decision. It's a greedy decision, but probably correct. It's not easy here for black to just let's say play a catch-up game in development and try to somehow get the king secure. Let's say bishop g7, for example. White just takes here and has direct threats. It's black must be quick here. This is why queen e4 is the best move. It attacks also the knight here, so
Check.
that white basically needs to do that. He had no square to retreat the knight to, so we have this trade. Let's say it looks like a trade, but white has this rook e1 intermediate move, of course. What is black doing? Queen d5. And now he took it. Yeah, you could have checked other squares. I mean, where else could black go? Could go to c6, but then there's rook c1. You're not really saving the piece here. Let's have a look at the game after queen c7. It's really urgent now for black. He needs to get out of the center. e6 is what he played, and white played the sharpest move again, taking on d4. Yeah, this is of course only possible because of this g5 move. We see that after queen takes, and this is what black played. He needs to do that probably. I don't really see another move, an alternative. White is just too active here in the center, attacking. Something like this, bishop c3, rook d1, and the discovery is very strong. So he just took it. And this is also it's the right decision. Bishop c3, secure. Queen c5, and the queen does not have any squares, so it's a queen trade. Yeah, black is an exchange down for the moment, but of course, have a look at the bishop. After f6, black has trapped the bishop, and it's difficult to secure it, to save it. You can try, but king f7 will probably pick up the bishop anyway. And I think what Rapport is doing now is also the right decision. At first note that this is really not good, because it wins a tempo, very important tempo. So this is lost, and black is in excellent shape. Rapport played rook c1, and this is I think a good choice. King e7. This is now, of course, threatening. And now he played bishop takes f6. This is a funny looking move, but it's basically simplifying the position enormously. Yeah, black needs to recapture, obviously. This is completely crazy, giving white an extra exchange. So king f6, the only move. And now he played rook ed1. Yeah, attacking the knight. If the knight moves somewhere, then this is hanging. Again, giving white an extra exchange. So, what is black's move? Cannot play this one. Yeah, let's say there is only one move. Basically, black protects the knight, and now white being a rook. He's playing with the rook against two minor pieces. So white should take the chance to simplify. Takes on d7, takes on c5. This was played, and we now have a rook endgame, where white has a tiny symbolic edge due to black's slightly compromised pawn structure. But to be honest, there is not much going on. Every decent player should draw that as black. They tried for a long while, but it's really very drawish, and I don't want to look into this in more detail. I mean, this is really a very drawish rook endgame. You could
Check.
analyze it more deeply, but then it gets very long.
Check.
So we just quickly go through the moves. White is always enjoying a little bit of something because of the better pawn structure, but there's really no headway to make. So after I think about on move 60 they
Check.
agree to a draw. Yeah, and this is completely dead. In here we see a very typical transformation where black at some point here gives away the pawn to activate the position, especially the king. So a very correct draw, I think, with both sides playing a very good game. Okay, next one in the list is Naiditsch against Harikrishna. Okay, let me pull this up. Yeah, and we need to note that Naiditsch is having a real terrible tournament. He's on minus, I don't know, a lot. -5, -6. It's really a terrible event. And in this game against Harikrishna, he's playing a really uncommon opening. Knight c3 already is very rare. And normally white now continues with bishop g5, the so-called very soft opening. Really uncommon choice. But well, it cannot be terribly bad. It's basically employing the ideas of the Chigorin defense to the Queen's Gambit with an extra tempo, so it's certainly not worse for white. However, bishop f4 was played. Naiditsch didn't go for bishop g5, which really makes some more sense to me, as it builds up a possible pin, yeah, on g5. Any move of the e-pawn, for example, preparing castling, is a pin, and on f4 it's not doing much. We see that after bishop f5 he played f3, and yeah, I have my doubts about that. It's well, you will never ever play e4 here. Black is controlling the square very reliably. This might prepare g4, but it still feels like maybe white should just play e3, bishop d3 and develop. You cannot expect much here anyway, and this looks more realistic to me. Well, he played f3 and went for a very quick long castles, and I think that Harikrishna's reply is very interesting. He played knight c6. This was a bit surprising to me, but looking at the game, it makes some sense. The idea is that a quick knight b4 can be real tricky now, attacking the c2 pawn. With white having castled long, this is not so easy to defend. Yeah, queen e1 was played, probably preparing possible rook d2 to cover c2, and maybe this queen is preparing e4. So need a prophylactic move with bishop g6. What happens if white now plays e4? And Naiditsch didn't do that, but what happens? This is what he played. If he plays e4 here, black can also just castle and later prepare activity on the queen side. Knight a5 to c4 can also be an idea, and only later the c-pawn is used. I really have some issues with white's play. It simply does not look right to me. Yeah, well, he played knight h3, castles, and knight f2, probably preparing this. But after knight h5, this bishop was attacked, And yeah, where to put it? You cannot go here. It's just giving away the all-important pawn. And after bishop g3, yeah, black can, amongst others, just take it and gain the bishop pair while weakening the dark squares in white's camp. It's not helpful at all. He decided to keep the bishop and go to e3, but this is very unharmonious. I mean, look at this bishop. It's just not doing anything. And Harikrishna plays this very nicely. Knight b4, attacking here. Rook d2, and now c5. This is of course very important. The pawn must be used to attack white's center, and it also allows the queen to join the game. After g4, he just retreated, of course. And after h4, knight d7. This is all very nicely played. The knight can regroup here, and white, white's play only makes sense in connection with h5 really, but this is not a move that is playable. Black can just take here, and this leads to absolute disaster. For example, if white captures here, this is a very, very naughty fork, sorry. Yeah, well, probably here, and then black just takes here and attacks the queen. Yeah, and something like that, for example, is totally hopeless. Where is this bishop going? Yeah, white loses a piece. So yeah, white is essentially busted here already. And after f4, he played bishop f6, going here to increase the pressure on d4. Knight c4. Yeah, and this is now a forced win. There was also knight c4, but there are many ways to get a great position here. He just took here, and yeah, well, we first need to briefly check this one.
Check. Check.
Isn't this terrible? I mean, it's really not a nice picture for white. Yeah, he took on b6, and after the simple recapture, it turns out that white is attacked here. And what is his move? He took here after knight a2 and king b2. Black, however, has a very simple solution. He played queen d6, and this is threatening queen a3 with a quick mate, and in fact mate is already unavoidable here. So a really terrible loss for Najditch, who is certainly very frustrated with the course of the tournament. Still, it might be more, yeah, let's say professional to just play some boring games to at least keep some rating points. This kind of setup really is giving away the point rather easily, I guess. And Harikrishna was glad to collect this. Okay, let's go to the next game. Let's go to Gelfand against Dominguez. Gelfand also having a bad tournament, not winning much. I think he hasn't won a game yet, if I'm not mistaken. But he lost a couple and really does not seem to be in good shape. Dominguez is playing a good tournament. He's in one of the guys that, with optimal play, might even catch Aronian. So an important game. We get a Grunfeld. And well, Dominguez is a regular Grunfeld player, while Gelfand is also playing the Grunfeld as black, but also for a long time is known as a player who fights the Grunfeld successfully. In this game, we see Gelfand playing the bishop d2 line, still somewhat of a sideline against this opening, but it recently gained some popularity. White has found some ways to make this a testing system. Dominguez plays a very straightforward system. He took on c3. This for years had been considered to be somewhat of a second-rate continuation, because after bishop c3 it was thought that this trade, which very likely is going to happen, we see that after put this on the board here, it was always thought that this is not very advisable for black to trade this important bishop. Of course, it's somewhat of a pride of black's setup, the fianchettoed bishop. But it turns out that in concrete terms, this trade is not a problem at all. In the game, we see that Dominguez is quickly attacking the center. White builds up a really broad center with f4, and Dominguez is attacking it quickly, typical for the Grunfeld. This and b5, typical dynamic Grunfeld move. He does not want to play little passive moves, but wants to be active. Gelfand took it, no big choice. After this, ed knight d7 was played, and what is black's compensation? Black's compensation lies in the fact that white, with lots of pawn moves, especially f4 here, has weakened many squares. The e file is weak, and he's not really well developed. Note that the king is still in the center. So after the trade, I think this makes sense. It can easily happen that the knight gets activated here, and the bishop is not a very useful defensive piece. So I think this makes some sense to take it. Bishop takes, knight f3. Black played bishop b5. So we can sum up that black sacrificed a pawn in the opening, but the compensation lies in those weaknesses, pawn weaknesses and square weaknesses. To be honest, I think that both players really played an excellent game here. It's not very exciting, but it seems that it's almost impossible to suggest a substantial improvement. Also, the computer does not really find anything great. It at the end boils down to the fact that the d pawn is not supported at the moment by the c pawn, and the knight on f3 is just not an active piece. It's just looking at squares that are controlled, and it cannot be used at the moment to support the extra pawn in the center. Black is just increasing the pressure on d5 and gets it back. And in fact, after this, I think maybe in some other event they already could have agreed to a draw. It continues for a while here, but black is just far too active to be in any trouble. Here black even has the slightly better pawn structure, but it's completely equal because of the rook is not being very active. Yeah, I can show the rest of this. Yeah, it's it's quite funny. The rook cannot really, I mean, black cannot benefit from the extra pawn. White will always get it back, and here they agreed to a draw. Yeah, not a very exciting game, but I think Gelfand was probably okay with just playing a safe draw after all those losses. It's really quite a typical way to play as black in the Grunfeld. There's no use in playing any passive setup, so something like b5 is a very good motif to remember, to break up the center and gain time in order to fight white's pawns here. So fine game by both players. Really, it's nothing great for the spectators, but this is very often the case if there are not many mistakes being made. Yeah, think of a yeah, typical game of football or soccer. If both players, if both teams are playing on a very high level, sometimes don't have the most exciting games. It's more interesting if mistakes are being made and something dramatic happens. Okay, next game, Wesley So against Luke van Wely. Yeah, van Wely having a good event. He already scored 2 wins in the last round, and he goes for the King's Indian against Wesley So. Slight surprise, Van Wely has played the King's Indian in his youth, but only rarely plays it nowadays. He's more known as winning against the King's Indian, actually, with very sharp lines in the classical. Yeah, speaking of the classical King's Indian, we quickly reach the main line of the classical, with Wesley So playing the Korchnoi variation with knight e1 and bishop e3. Yeah, this is the absolute main line of the knight e1 classical with bishop e3. This is very often named after Viktor Korchnoi, the living legend of chess, who's played this line numerous times, and he always believed that this is, I think he's going so far to say that this is the refutation of the opening. And he has scored many very impressive wins, but it's of course not a refutation of the King's Indian, but it's a very tough way to play, of course, for black, simply because white's pieces are always geared towards the center, the queen side, and it almost for sure means that white will break through on this side of the board, and black really needs to do or die approach, deliver mate on the king side. In fact, Wesley So has played this numerous times before, and he has a special line here. He plays g4. This is not seen so often, and to be honest, I'm quite surprised that this is a rare move. It seems to be quite interesting. With g4, he tries to preempt black's own g4 idea, and make sure that black's attack is not coming so quickly. Black could take on g3 en passant, but after the capture, it's not clear how he's proceeding with any attack. I think this is very helpful for white. Also note that now f5 is a weakness, so white maybe can use this route for a good knight repositioning. Taking is not good. What Van Wely plays, I think is perfectly alright. h5, h3, and now quickly getting a rook on the h file. The delicate thing about this opening and this position in particular is that that white and black in some respect as well needs to balance defensive moves with active moves. Of course, you need to crash through on your side, black on the king side, trying to mate the king, and white on the queen side, but you also, of course, need to pay attention what's happening on the other side. So you need to combine attack and defense, and I think they both do a good job here. White activates the knight to prepare c5 and manages to play this important breakthrough. Black now takes on c5. This is always an interesting decision. How should you go about that? Taking is not the most common decision, but it seems to be okay here. If black allows white to take, this is maybe maybe too slow. I mean, rook c1, knight b5 to c7 is coming quickly. In fact, I think Van Wely is playing this perfectly okay. It leads to very, very sharp play. Bishop c5, knight to g6, the knight nearing the king. Rook c1. And bishop to f8. And in fact, this is quite remarkable. If you compare this to, for example, the game of today, Rapport against Giri, where they were on unknown territory on move 4. We here have a novelty on move 19, when Wely is playing a new move here, and he deviates from 2 games that Wesley So has played here with White in 2012 and 2011. He had this position where Black took on g4 and led to interesting play as well. But bishop f8 is a new idea. Yeah, knight b5, directly going for the weakness, and now bishop d6. Yeah, blocking the d pawn. And if you manage to sort of cut your losses on the queen side, then Black is in really good shape. Okay, queen b3. Yeah, this can be a factor. Black needs to be cautious about that. And the queen is also quite often a good defensive piece on the 3rd rank. When Wely took. And Wesley So recaptured with the f-pawn. This is not seen so often. You would normally have this type of recapture, and it seems to be playable. It's not losing or anything, but I kind of like this idea to use the 3rd rank to defend the h-pawn and not easily allow Black's rook to enter. Wait, queen e7. This is combining attack and defense, defending those squares, but also trying to activate the queen to increase the pressure on the h-pawn. Takes. And knight a7. Yeah, this is very very principled. Grab the material while you can. And here we have one of the, in fact, many critical positions. Queen h7 is, I think, very logical and not debatable. It attacks the weakness here. And if White just grabs now on c8, you could take here. Then rook takes h3 is really very strong. This is a very strong threat. So something like this, for example, is even answered by knight h4. Black has just a deadly attack here. No real way to prevent that. Note that it's not only this capture, it's also rook g3 check. So knight takes c8 is not possible. Rook takes c8. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. It's not helping for White at all to grab the piece. Yeah, what should he do? He cannot really take the piece. It seems there's only one move, rook c3. Covering h3, securing against this this threat. And here Black has more than one interesting move, and it seems that they are all playable and quite often lead to a draw. I mean, if I say they are all playable, I can briefly show you a couple of ideas. Here Black, for example, could have played, when Wely's move is perfectly okay, but he could have played even the simple capture here on a7. Not a very obvious choice, but he could have done that. Rook takes c8 check, and then just retreat here. The point is that, this is a threat now. And what is White supposed to do? We can play an active move, like queen b6. After which, of course, Black is breaking through here, threatening rook g3 with at least a perpetual. And White can do any kind of firework here, like
Check.
this.
Check.
but this is only good enough for a draw. It's simply not possible to easily defend against this attack. Instead of queen b6 here, you can also consider a passive defense, like rook c3. But this is an important point, actually. e4 is hanging, and black will take that, getting two important passes in the center. Taking on a7 was playable, no doubt. Another interesting choice would have been bishop to d7. This is just attacking the knight now, and yeah, the only sensible move now is queen b7, grabbing another pawn, after which black probably plays rook f8, possibly supporting the f pawn to go even more forward. Yeah, and this is of course a very rich position to analyze. Black is 2 pawns down, but all pieces are taking part in the attack, while those two important pieces are, yeah, well, sort of distracting black a bit. It's not like they're completely out of play, but they're rather far away from the king side. And it seems that blacks should have enough play to probably secure a draw, but this is no exhaustive analysis. It's certainly possible to look at this in much more detail. Just one line to show what happens if white plays bishop b5, attacking here and maybe trying to force further exchanges. Yeah, black in fact can ignore the d7 bishop and just take here, and this is again good enough for a draw. After queen d7, black has queen to h4, and yeah, this is really too much to handle if white now takes. This threat is enough for a draw.
Check.
And now you need this knight to, yeah, to have enough pieces to secure the draw. Not at all easy to calculate, but what I'm trying to show is that there's more than one way here for black to get a playable, interesting position. He played f3, which is also okay. It seems this is a very, in my mind, very human move. He wants to give away this pawn to activate the knight. Yeah, this is quite similar to what we saw before, but now the f pawn is missing, so that knight f4 or play against the f file is possible. Bishop g2 and knight f4. Black has sacrificed 3 pawns now, but it's very, very active. This is a very strong knight on f4, and I think that now So's decision is it's very understandable. He just took the knight. He couldn't really stand the sight of this this piece any longer, and just took it. And yeah, now when Wely takes with the e pawn, which is probably debatable, g takes seems to be stronger, and it's still a very unclear position. For instance, after knight c6, you have to analyze f3 again, which seems to be enough for a draw, like this. Like this, for instance. This should lead to a draw, again by perpetuals, and the queen enters after sacrifices. Something like this is even losing. Yeah, very, very complicated business. He took with the e-pawn, however, and this seems to be questionable. After knight c6, queen g7. Here white could have preserved, I guess, some advantage by playing queen to b6, for example. This also intends to use the queen for defense or get it to d4. He played queen b4, not illogical at all, attacking here and also introducing the queen d4 idea that I just showed. But against queen b4, Van Wely has a very direct counterplay, and he found it. Not too difficult, but of course still need to play it. f3, securing the breakthrough. Rook takes, and now he took on h3. So this is happening after all. It was a motif in numerous lines, and now it is played. King g2, and here he played rook h6. Rook h4 seems to be a bit easier, but still this is a playable move. Went here, and queen b6, intending queen d8. Queen f8. Yeah, this has more than one idea. One is certainly to enter, but also in some cases you can consider the sacrifice. So it's very understandable what he's doing. He's trying to get the queens off, and yeah, black exchanged and played king g7, intending to use the king. Knight c6. And rook h8. The rook is needed to help in defense. So let's take stock here. White has 3 pawns for the exchange, which is really quite a lot. But it seems that those relatively, yeah, not so dangerous pawns at the moment, they're somewhat backward. They are not so dangerous. I mean, it looks scary on paper, but it's not losing probably. Played e5, and here it's a question what black should do. In fact, Van Wely, with I guess little time on the clock, it's 90. It's move 39 here. He took on c6, and this loses straight away. He needs to do something else. I mean, this one probably, or rook a8. Maybe rook a8 is the tougher move even. And then he needs to try to hang on with his endgame, something like this, for example. And then the king. Black has some chances to defend. It's not necessarily lost. It's certainly critical, but it's something that still needs to be played very precisely by white. And even then, I'm not sure it is winning. The problem was, however, he took on c6, and after the capture, here, white played bishop e4, and this is now quite simple. He threatens bishop f5 and promotion, so there is basically only rook c8 available to prevent that, and after that there's simply the b-pawn pushing up the board, and white will promote one of his queenside pawns. So nice win at the end for Wesley. So I mean, Van Wely really played a good creative great game, and he was certainly very close to get enough play to maybe get to a draw to perpetual. Here probably he should have played rook h4. This is just a bit more active. The end game that he got is maybe, as I mentioned, still something you can try to defend, but it's not a very attractive task, because you can only draw if everything goes perfectly, but you can easily lose against the pawns. Alright, so I saved the most important game in terms of the overall standings for last, and this is Aronian playing Karjakin. Aronian having a great tournament, leading it with how much is this? They have +5 even. I think he's got +5. and Karjakin is one point behind. So a very important game. Let's see what happens. Aronian playing white, and Karjakin plays his very standard defense, the Queen's Indian. It's his pet opening for ages. And in fact, if we look at this, we get one of the typical main lines of the Queen's Indian defense that both players have quite some experience in. Yeah, this opening you could easily make a survey on that is hours long, because there are so many different lines. In general, Black's play evolves around playing c6 and d5, attacking the center. We see that this is happening. And here we we reached an isolated, a hanging pawn formation, in a way where white is close to getting the hanging pawns, but he's got this pressure along this diagonal, so black has a hard time to ever capture on c4. In fact, we see that this tension in the center is maintained for quite a long while. Castles, knight c6, bishop f4, and knight a5. Yeah, in fact, all this has been played before, and more than once. Curiously enough, if we go to exactly this position on move 18, we in the database you can find a game where Karjakin was playing black here against Peter Leko in the, I think it was one of those Grand Prix tournaments in Zug in Switzerland, one of the greatest places to to play a chess tournament, because Zug in German, it's a German word, means move. So it's quite fitting to play a chess tournament there. All right, so this has been played before, and now Karjakin plays a new move. He plays queen to d6, which is meant to improve on knight e4 in the mentioned game against Leko. In the game against Leko, it was also the case that black was very slightly worse and struggling a bit. So queen d6 is understandable that he's trying to improve. This is also one of the top choices of the computer. In fact, I do believe that this whole position is just very slightly favorable for white, due to the more active pieces and the pressure on the center. We now see a slight simplification. Took on f6 and took on d5. Yeah. Recaptures. Yeah. You can check alternatives here. Knight takes e5, for example. But after that, it seems that white is gaining a pawn here. This is hanging. Something like this.
Check.
White will be a pawn up at the end. I think what Karjakin played was perfectly okay. He just recaptured, and now he's got some pressure on e5, so white needs to take care of that. He took on d5, getting a pawn, and now bishop takes on e5. There are various possibilities here. For example, here there's also rook a8. First, using this rook to increase the central pressure. Lines like this, for example, are not clear at all, because the pawn here can easily drop due to the pressure of the heavy pieces. There were a number of possibilities, but what Karjakin is doing is okay. He just takes the pawn back, and this basically means after this that we have, I'd like to have some more moves in here. if we look at this, we see that we have a completely symmetrical pawn structure. Well, besides the g3 move, that is unique for white. Black has not played g6. It's completely symmetrical, so play is mostly about piece activity, and quite often it means that do you have enough activity to, let's say, get a rook on the 7th rank, or do you have enough activity to win a pawn at some point. And it's clear that white is the one to dictate events here because of the active minor pieces here. So black is the one to defend here. But it seems that while this is not such a pleasant task, black is still okay. He played queen to g6. Okay, no queen trade, of course. So quite obvious. g6, of course, and knight d5 there. So white is trying to activate his pieces as mentioned, and now with rook c1 increases the pressure on c6. The next move seems to be one of the critical points of this game. It is not, as mentioned, a pleasant task to defend black's position, but it seems to be possible with the move rook f2 e8. It's of course it's a very obvious move. You certainly think about it, activating your last piece here, the rook on f8 to e8. But the move that probably irritated Karjakin in his calculation was, I guess, queen to h4. This looks very normal. Yeah, getting this threat into the mix. And the big point is that here black can really play g5, which is a very ugly move, but it's tactically justified. Black can afford it, and white really does not have a great reply here. The problem being that something
Check.
like this,
Check.
which looks nice at first, is just answered by king g7. Black ignores this bishop, and now it gets very tricky because black also has the opportunity to play knight to d4, for example. Just have a look. Yeah, now this is it starts to hang in a way. It needs to move at some point, so retreat and then knight d4. And now we see that this is quite something. This check, for example, will regain the pawn.
Check.
As there's only king f1 available.
Check.
And in this position, it seems to be completely equal. Black must be still slightly cautious because of this weak square, but unless he's really letting his guard down, he should draw here. g5 is a very important resource that you can easily misjudge. Yeah? After g5, there's still another line you need to check. What happens if white keeps pieces on and threatens bishop takes h7 here, for example? After that, there's also knight d4. And here, in fact, black has lots of tricky play available. He's also putting some pressure on those centralized pieces. And note that this diagonal with g3 is slightly weakened, so it's a complicated position where black is enjoying fair chances. Rook f8 is probably the move that will equalize here, but it's not easy to judge the consequences of a really ugly move like g5 to judge it correctly. The computer is very unimpressed by white, but I understand that it's not easy for black to find it. He played king to h8, getting out of the possible checks on f6. But after knight takes b6, white of course wins a pawn. Of course Karjakin has seen that. He's not overlooked a simple move like knight takes b6. But I guess he thought that he gets enough activity to balance the game out at the end. Yeah, we see that Aronian grabbed the pawn, and now he played rook d2. So a very human decision, giving away a pawn for the active pieces and now activating the rook. Note that white now cannot take here because of queen d4 with a funny double threat. This is why queen h4 was played, looking at this square and also swinging the queen over to the queen side. It's I must admit that after rook takes, white got it back. Okay, one advance a couple of more moves. It's a very obvious, I think, development. White has this b3 pawn. Just want to put some more moves on the board. Here it's a very curious position. after queen d2, I think everything before was rather logical or even obvious. In this position, I really would have thought that black should avoid the queen trade at all costs. He played h4, funny enough. And after that, Aronian played queen b2. It seems that, if I read this correctly, that in the post-game interview, Aronian stated that he wasn't sure that this is really a winning rook endgame. This surprised me. I mean, of course, he's it's not even fair to compare it, my endgame knowledge with his, but I would have really thought that with the rook behind the pawn and no particular special features of the position, that white should be able to win. And I'm surprised that Karjakin allowed that. It's possible, though, that instead of h4, if you play something else, that the b-pawn supported by the rook is still enough to win the game. It's possible. But still, I'm surprised that he allowed the queen trade. If we look at this, I really don't see much of a defense. White will advance to c3. The only somewhat distinct feature of this position might be this h-pawn push, where black can try to invade. But we see that in the game that this is not really so dangerous. Yeah, here the pawn is already advancing, and black went all the way to h3, but after the capture and f4, this is not leading to anything much. Yeah, it's already on b6, and around here, I think black is really lost. The king is quickly supporting the pawn. And we have a setup where the pawns are not really dangerous, black's pawns.
Check.
Yeah, note that after this, the f-pawn is not dangerous at all, as white always has rook on the f-file to stop it. For example, if black now plays f3, there's just king c7.
Check.
Something like that. And at the end, the pawn is being caught, and white wins easily with the extra rook. Yeah, a very tactical game at the end, but it seems to really get to this critical position where rook fe8 would have kept the balance. After that, it's a very uphill struggle. I mean, maybe there is a tougher defense, but this is already very difficult to play. It would be interesting if you have more time on your hands to analyze exactly this endgame position that black allowed, if it is really a flat out win. I think white is very close to winning, but I'm not 100% positive that it is a forced win. Need to be cautious with very extreme statements like that. Even if Aronian is not 100% sure, it's not. I really cannot be sure as well. So it's very, very tough for black to defend. So another very crucial win for Aronian, who's now almost has it in the bag. He's 1.5 point clear of Giri, who's on second place, and there are only 2 rounds to go. So Aronian in excellent shape, and if he continues like that, he certainly is the top guy to watch for the candidates tournament. That it's not so far away. It's in March, just starting in I think 5 or 6 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, to get to know the new challenger for Carlsen later this year. So I think again tomorrow is a rest day. They have really lots of rest days in this tournament due to this location changes. So maybe tomorrow, if I'm managed, I'm not having so much time, I'm going to show 1 or 2 games from the B group, which is really interesting as well. But you see that the videos are very long, only with covering the A group, the Masters group, I think it is called now. Alright, I hope you liked it. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow, probably with the B group, 1 or 2 games. Bye!